would be honored if you would join us.
Greetings and welcome to another Film Stories. This is Dan Cooper, and today we are looking at the film story, the production of the John Carpenter 1983 film Christine. So Christine, of course, was the killer car movie that was based on the Stephen King novel. It was made at the same time as two other King adaptations, Cujo and The Dead Zone. So the film opens with a scene in Motor City in Detroit, which wasn't in the book. The novel instead worked on the premise that Christine was possessed by the spirit of her evil owner, whereas the movie posited this idea that she was birthed bad, straight from the factory line. She was evil from the moment she rolled off production in Detroit, with that really great opening sequence. That, of course, is referenced by the choice of music, Bad to the Bone, by George Thorogood. Interestingly, Thorogood had a small cameo in the cut scene from the film. Actually, he along with the film's screenplay writer, they played junkyard workers who compress the destroyed Christine right at the end of the film. But the whole scene was cut out as neither of them could act. Anyway, that scene was shot. The very first scene of Christine rolling off the production line was shot on the very first day of production. Carpenter himself was late to the shoot that day, as he'd been pulled over in his own car for a breathalyzer test. In an interview with Fangoria, Alexandra Paul, who plays Lee Cabot, the girlfriend of Arnie Cunningham, the hapless nerd who, through buying Christine, is transformed into the bad boy of the film. But yeah, Alexandra Paul, his on-screen girlfriend, she spoke in Fangoria about how it was quite a difficult shoot for the young actors. How, for especially her, it was a first or second film. They were shooting at night. The climactic scenes of the film all set at night, and shooting at 3 a.m. in the morning. She speaks about being overcome with nausea from tiredness, and has some parts of the shoot were really hard. The scene, if you remember, where she begins to choke in the car after Christine kills her, or tries to kill her at the drive-in. She talked then about how that was quite a difficult scene to shoot, in part because she was vegetarian and she didn't eat burgers, so she didn't even really want to eat the food. But the Highland maneuver scene, she said, was difficult as well. One scene that's particularly memorable about the film, which Time magazine criticised, but it's always been one of my favourite parts, is the iconic Show Me scene when Christine's been destroyed by Buddy Repperton and the other high school bullies, and then in front of Arnie, the car simply rebuilds herself. That was and still holds up now as a really impressive special effects sequence that was done using hydraulics that pulled the bodywork of the car inwards, and then of course the camera work was reversed, so it looks like the car's pushing the panels back outwards from a state of destruction back to perfection. Christine herself, the car was a 58 Plymouth Fury, and there were 21 incarnations of Christine in various states of disrepair, depending on the scene. Going back and looking at the film, though, one thing really shines through, and that's just how much, looking at interviews, how much the cast and crew really respected Carpenter. Everyone seems to speak about the good vibes on the set, the way he created a sense of community, the way he shot really quickly and didn't use overly long setups compared to a director, Keith Gordon, who played the lead. Compares him to say De Palma, and although he says he has great respect for both, having worked for both, he talks about how he really appreciates the way Carpenter quickly kind of moved through shots and kept his cast and crew moving all the time. So Keith Gordon, in terms of the feel of Christine, going back and watching it again now, it still has that completely unique, almost intangible, but completely unique feel that only John Carpenter can do. There's something about his, of course, his synthetic music, which he scores himself, but something about his use of lights and his composition together, it creates, I suppose it is a sense of authorship. Those sequences are unmistakably his. There's lots of talk about a legacy quel. Oh, that's a terrible term, I know. A long-belated sequel to Big Trouble in Little China. His his great kung fu movie with The Rock starring in it. But I mean, that film is big trouble if they don't bring Carpenter on board, because it's simply not going to look like his film. It's not going to feel like a sequel if it doesn't have that feel. And The Rock has talked about bringing Carpenter on board, but we'll see how legit that is as that production moves forward. Certainly, it seems like a much smarter choice to get him on board than trying to bring in a character from the original to create a sense of DNA, because it has to. If it doesn't look or feel like a John Carpenter film, then it's really not a sequel. And Carpenter clearly inspired his cast as well. I mean, Keith Gordon, who played Arnie, the haunted teen, who was the protagonist of the film, he went on to become a director. He's directed a lot of TV, Legion, Fargo, The Return, Leftovers, Homeland, Better Call Saul, and John Stockwell as well, who plays Dennis Gilder in the film, Arnie's buddy, the all-American football hero. He went on to direct the underrated Jeff Daniels TV movie Cheaters, which is definitely worth a watch, Into the Blue with Paul Walker, and a film on my Netflix list at the moment, Kickboxer Vengeance. So, as well as putting together an unforgettable film, he also clearly inspired his young cast to go on and become creators themselves. Carpenter did briefly revisit Christine last year. He made a 4-minute short, which if you haven't seen, back in 2017, it's worth checking out. I believe that, again, he scored the music for that, and then found himself shooting that 58 blood red Plymouth Fury one last time. It's an absorbing little watch, and I'll put a link to it below. So that's just a quick look back at the production of Christine and the absorbing talent that John Carpenter is, and the effect that really he had on his cast, and the inspiration that he was to them. If that's not a good reason to go back and watch this film, I don't know what is. So, hope you enjoyed that film story. We'll be back with another one soon. Please, we'd love it if you like, comment, subscribe. See you again soon for another film story.